got Keep It Classy. He says, what are your thoughts on building your own home theater speakers? I used to build subs and enclosures for car audio back in the day. Could be interesting and fun. So this is why we're doing AV Summit. First of all, I have to make a quick plug. So Keep It Classy, he does TV reviews, right? And so he's asking about home theater speakers, but also, car audio. So we're bringing everything together here. What do you think? I know, Aaron, you built your home theater speakers, didn't you?
Yep. I think it depends on how much time you want to invest, because if you want good ones, you can't just slap speakers in a box. You've really got to work out the crossover. You got to make sure you got the right enclosure size. You don't want to look like junk, so you at least need to have some woodworking skills, which means if you don't have tools, then you'll have to go out and buy tools. So I'm not trying to dissuade you. There you go. I'm not trying to dissuade you for building your own speakers,
right? It's
but it is, it's definitely, if you want to make good speakers, because anybody with, a jigsaw, some wood, and Parts Express account can go out and buy whatever and just put stuff together. But if you want to make good speakers, it's not
hard.
easy. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah,
I mean, people dedicate their whole lives to designing speakers. So
I test speakers from people who have been doing it for 20 plus years, and there are still things that aren't perfect about them, or not that there ever will be, but still things that I'm like, hey, were you aware of this? And I said, no.
I think you got to be passionate about that too. There's like people always ask me, hey, when are you going to review some DIY stuff? And I said, I'll be honest with you, man, unless, it doesn't come with something like this and a keyboard, I don't really build it. I can build it on the computer and I can draw it up and design it. But when it comes to hands-on stuff, tools and equipment, somebody was impressed today. Maybe it was Tristan. He was like, oh, Michael got his level out. It's like a laser level. I'm like, dude, that wasn't mine. That's my buddy's. I don't have any of those tools.
But interesting and fun, probably could be interesting and fun, or it could be like, I wasted a lot of time. It could be,
or it could be the development of getting into the hobby full bore, and then you look back like me a decade later, and you've got all this stuff, and you don't know what to do with it. But
or you do that, and 10 years later, you've created like the new speaker that everybody wants. That's also another.
You can do that. Hey, I know somebody who would be happy to review it for you if you want. The alternative, I should say, is DIY Sound Group. So you can do that. You can also go to Parts Express and check out their knockdown kits. And that's probably how I would tell somebody who's looking to get into DIY, get started, because they come as a kit. You can build it together. You can understand about the crossover. And then that's your first step. You understand the basics. And then from there, if you want to graduate into designing your own crossover, then that's the next step.
Aaron, I have a question about that path. So you know how you have some speaker companies like GR Research and those guys who they've done everything, but you just have to assemble it.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously it's also inexpensive, but is it different?
Yeah, no. So I think the idea is that you get more bang for your buck. That's the notion. Okay. Is that because you're not paying somebody, well, for one thing, when you have to ship a big enclosure, right? Like that takes up money, or that consumes money because you're having to take up space to ship it. So when you buy a knockdown kit, it's just the panels and you glue it together, you put it all together yourself. And the same thing with all the other extras that you do.
Is that the same thing?
A good example of that is actually the
flat pack. Yeah,
the Overnight Sensations are probably some of the best-selling DIY speakers ever. Right? And I've built some, and they're really fun to do. You get to paint it whatever color you want, and you feel like a sense of accomplishment afterwards. Right. You're like, hey, this actually plays sound, and it sounds pretty good. But if I were to really compare it and say, all right, this is how much this stuff costs versus going out and just buying a speaker that's built, a lot of times they have the economies of scale, right? That's what they have to their advantages. They're building a bunch of them. So I don't know if it's always the case. I would say just keep it more on like, you want to just build something. You just want to have fun to do something, because it might be the case that a speaker you could buy from the store might actually outperform it.
Could be.
Hey, wait. Yeah. SIS Services said that JTR is going to be at the AV Summit. Is that true? I'm so excited.
Hopefully. Oh no, that'd be news to me. Yeah.
That's the rumors that started.
The rumors are starting.
JTR, RTJ,
RTJ.
I'm like, it's bad over here.
Yeah, but got Hisense for sure.
But then Joe, that's one big problem though. It doesn't say Sony on it, right?
What?
You got to make it say Sony first.
You got to make it say Sony on it. Well, I guess with the DIY, you can make it say whatever. It would be like my pseudo Sony sub.
Right. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, so I don't want to discourage anybody from going DIY, just kind of to set expectations. There's sometimes it's actually just easier. So it really depends on how much time you're willing to invest. Like my first subwoofer enclosure, my first 3 or 4 were probably garbage by today's standards, but you got to start somewhere, Right. And for me, the fun part was getting to build something with my dad. I went out and acquired the tools over time. So that's the other, you just got to kind of factor those things in. But if you build one of the kits, like the flat pack kits, again, from Parts Express or DIY Sound Group, then that's a really good way to get into it economically. And then it's a springboard, if you want to go further. So I would encourage you to check that out first before you decide you're going to start trying to, because not only do you have to design a crossover, you got to design the box, you got to find the right speaker to go inside the box, and then you got to figure out where you're going to cross things over. And it's just, if you want to build a good one, it's not easy.
You're probably going to use a computer to figure some of that stuff out, and you're going to need to learn how to use that software.
Right.
Very interesting stuff. Also, one thing you might not even know is you're going to have to be sanding. If you want that thing to look perfect before you paint it, you got to sand. You didn't know you needed to sand, did you?
And one of my biggest things too is like, all right, after you build this thing, it looks beautiful. Maybe it sounds amazing, but what's it going to look like? I mean, are you just going to paint it? Right. Are you going to try to do a veneer?
I think it's got to be
square-ish. As long as it's square-ish.
But I mean, are you going to put Duratex on it and just make it?
I did that too.
Rounded corners.
If that's another aspect of it that
ends up being the most time-consuming and most expensive part. What you just said, because choice of wood, finish, veneer, and paint, quality paint, piano gloss, and then you screw up and you do it again. You sand it.
Is hard.
But you got to start somewhere. That's the thing. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Everybody's a beginner.
I know. I guess to answer your question is buy like the 10th speaker, you'll be good. It'll be good. That'll finally be good.
You may be good by the 5th or 4th one, though. Maybe
if the cuts aren't perfectly straight, just tighten the clamps harder.
Yeah, and leave the clamps on.
Just make it. The glue it'll settle.
You just round the edges. Yeah, round the edges. That's it.
Exactly. It might topple a little bit if you don't put it on the table.
Exactly.
It's not 100% flat. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not straight. The straights aren't cut straight.
Oh man!
But when you're doing these speakers, I know I will end up having FOMO for better drivers. So
absolutely,
it's only $20. Wait, that's 20. And then next thing you know, you're $200 exotic drivers made in Belgium, handmade. Because I went down that very sad. I'm never going to build anything because you end up with these $5,000 hard to find magnetic horn drivers. I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole, man. But it's fun. But it can be fun. Sometimes when I built mine, I'm like, oh my God.
What was that?
I look at it and I'm like, oh, is this really worth it? But you learn a lot. I learned how to model things and CAD programs and stuff from building them. So and there's different things you can apply. It's just kind of makes you a more rounded person, I think.
This is actually true.
Yeah, that's actually really funny. Inside.
I swear to you, I have pictures. It was so dusty for the longest time in there.
Do you use MDF? I'm assuming you probably did.
It's probably unsafe too.
Dude. That's the worst.